The Terex AT20 is a pick and carry crane. It's got a maximum capacity of 20 tonnes and it can lift to a maximum height of 20 metres when a fly jib is fitted. This model by Conrad comes in a Terex branded box, but it doesn't have any information about the real crane. Opening up the insides, and the packaging is typical Conrad. It's one of those foam backed cardboard pieces which protects the model well during shipping. There are no instructions for the model and the only things in the box are the crane and a bag of small parts. There are a few small parts to add to the model to complete it, and the first ones of those are the mirrors, which just press into holes in the door windows, and they are a reasonable fit. There's a separate machinery hook, and that can be fitted to one of 3 lifting points on the boom sections, and it's easy enough to fix in place using one of the plastic pins provided. Next up, there's also an additional fixed lifting point which can fit to the end of the boom, and this one's a little bit more fiddly to get in properly, but it does go in. And although it's really stiff enough that it doesn't need pinning, there are plastic pins provided and you can use those in the holes at the tip of the boom. Another part that also uses those holes is the optional fly jib, and that comes as a separate part, and when you're not using it, it can store in a place on the back of the truck. The last thing to do is everyone's favourite job, and that's reeve up the hook block. So to start that, the first thing to do is to peel off the tape that Conrad uses on the winch drum and then just pull it off, and that takes the thread with it. You can also use the separate little metal handle that plugs into the winch to unwind the thread. Once you've got enough thread off the drum, you can then start the fiddly bits. We have a viewer question from Evan Elpus of Canada. Evan asks, can scale models be used to play Angry Birds? Well, Evan, all I can say is if you launch one of your scale models at your wife or girlfriend, you will certainly have one very angry bird. Getting back to the review, and reeving the hook block is a little bit fiddly, so you have to be patient. But there is one issue, which is that there's no obvious tying off point for when you've reeved the hook. Anyway, after extensive research by the CranesEtcTV technical department, a solution was found. And the easiest thing to do is to unpin the fixed hook at the end of the boom, and then rotate it forward a little. That then allows you to pull the end of the thread forward and down, and then you can clip it by folding the fixed hook back up. All you do then is to reinsert the pin, and you've effectively clamped the end of the thread. And as long as you don't want a lightning conductor at the end of the boom, you can just snip off the loose end. With the reeving done, the last thing to do to display the crane in transport mode is to wind up the hook block to stop it waving about. That completes the assembly of the model and allows it to be displayed in road-going configuration. Starting underneath, the transmission is nicely modelled and the heavy tyres have a nice tread pattern. They are mounted on decent looking plastic wheels and each wheel has a plastic mud flap behind it. The distinctive shape at the front is modelled well with chevron graphics and a lifting beam, although there are no windscreen wipers for the cab. The plastic door mirrors are not high quality and they don't have a silvered surface, and the hydraulic rams for the steering at the pivot point are not modelled. Things look better at the rear though, where the graphics and lights stand out. At the back, the exhaust, the engine cover and the handrails are all modelled in metal. The boom sections are also metal, with the second section having the weight reducing holes modelled well. One nice detail is that all of the pulleys used on the model are metal, and even though the fly jib is a plastic part, it has an excellent colour match. For the features review, we'll take a look underneath the model first, and the rear axle has a degree of float. The front axle is completely fixed and each of the wheels turns independently, which is good. The crane steers by movement across the central pivot point, and the model has a very good range of movement, but it's quite loose because there are no rams controlling it. It does roll along very well in a curve, but hey, you can have some fun with it and really do a bit of a wiggly woo. After that shimmy shammy, let's have a look at the crane functions. The boom can be raised using the 2 cylinders, and it's very stiff, so it will hold any pose that you want to set. And using the winch is easy using the special key that's provided. Fortunately, the winch drum has got enough friction so it will hold any sensible load that's put on the hook. A nice feature is that the lifting beam that's fixed at the front can be removed, and it's a good fit on the end of the hook so it can be used for lifting. So let's use the crane for a genuine imitation real life test, and here it drives up to pick up this entirely useless drum. The big advantage of the pick and carry crane is that it doesn't use outriggers, so when it picks up a load it can drive along with it. If you like, having a longer boom than the one on the model extends by just pulling it out. But as you can see, you do have to keep retensioning the hook by hand because the thread is not particularly free rolling through the pulleys. So here is the AT20 at work in one of the areas that it's designed for. It's in the CranesEtcTV mine and it's delivering the useless drum up to the top of a Liebherr 996. Only on CranesEtcTV will you see such realism. Another option for the real crane and the model is to get some additional lifting height by attaching the Fly Jib. It adds about an extra 3 meters to the real crane, and on the model it just fits into the end of the boom top. So having de-rigged the hook block, we can then fit the Fly Jib on, and there are two posing possibilities. You can either have it straight or at an offset angle. Once the jib is in place, you then just secure it with the two plastic pins. The hook block supplied with the model has twin pulleys, so if you want to use it suspended at the end of the Fly Jib on a single line, you need to be a little bit clever by tying it on so that it will hang straight, and that's best done by feeding the thread onto the axle between the two pulleys. Once the hook block is on, then the 4-section telescopic boom can be opened up, and at the maximum the model reaches a height of about 14 inches or 36 centimeters. The AT20 is an unusual type of crane in most parts of the world, but Conrad has done a good job modelling it. The detail level is not the highest, but as usual for Conrad, the functionality is very good. Overall, it's a good looking, interesting crane model and it's highly recommended.